Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Inside View with Teddy Panos. I am your host, Teddy Panos, coming to you. Well, depends on when you're watching it, but I'm recording this podcast this evening on a Monday night, February 13th, 2023, if you lost track of the year. And we've got a special guest joining us tonight, a woman who has kind of been at the center of a political firestorm involving the Lowell School Department for a couple of months now, though we just learned her identity yesterday with a Lowell Sun column that we're going to talk about today, along with trying to get a little bit more in depth into why this has become such a political firestorm. We'll introduce you to her in a quick minute. I just want to thank everyone for joining us, and of course, thank our sponsors for helping to make this podcast, all of our podcasts here at Inside Lowell, possible, and quite frankly, for making InsideLowell.com possible. Of course, our friends at Washington Savings Bank. I misplaced my coffee mug here in the office, so this is the first time in a few podcasts I've had it handy. I thought one of those rival banks tried to steal it because it was so cool. But you know what else is cool about Washington Savings Bank? They've got a great offer that you still have time to capitalize if you are a Lowell or Drake resident. If you open up a new account at Washington Savings Bank and have $1,000 of direct deposits, qualified direct deposits, payroll checks, Social Security checks, get $1,000 directly deposited into your new account within 30 days, they're going to give you $300, a 30% return on your money. Can't beat that. Very difficult to beat that. Plus, it's very difficult to beat Washington Savings Bank. Phenomenal service, personal banking, business banking. They know the area. They know the community very well. WashingtonSavings.com to learn more about all of their services and, of course, to capitalize on that special offer for Lowell and Drake residents. Thank you as well to our friends at Hafner's. You know, don't get fooled by the mild weather this time of year. Home heating is on top of the mind for many greater Lowellians. Should be, because eventually, you know, you're going to get that cold weather. Don't take any chances with your family. Don't take any chances with your home. Hafner's takes the worry off your mind with their comprehensive services, whether you use propane or heating oil in your home. They offer quick, reliable, and friendly service. Plus, Hafner's gas stations, convenience stores, and car washes can be found throughout the Merrimack Valley and southern New Hampshire. You see the sign behind me. Call 866-IT-KICKS. That's 866-IT-KICKS, or visit Hafners.com to learn more. Thank you as well to our friends at Reverie 73. People are always asking me. I'm a longtime resident of this area. Hey, what's your recommendation for a cannabis dispensary? Quite frankly, I knew very little about the industry. All the shops looked the same to me. And then I was introduced to the folks at Reverie 73. Right off the bat, you know you're in for a different experience. The store itself stands out. It's bright. It's beautiful. The staff is friendly, knowledgeable. They'll take the extra time to answer all of your questions and guide you in the right direction. So whether you're new to the world of cannabis or a canna connoisseur, I love that term, a canna connoisseur, Reverie 73 is sure to elevate your cannabis experience. Visit them at 1148 Bridge Street in Lowell or order online at reverie73.com. And with that, we turn our attention to this evening's podcast and our guest tonight, Kara Pigeon, a teacher at Lowell High School who is suddenly in the eye of the storm, as they like to say.
Yes.
You outed yourself. You went to the Lowell Sun, and they published an article yesterday, Sunday the 12th, about what you claim is unfair hiring human resource practices. First of all, good evening. Welcome to Inside Lowell.
Good evening. Yeah, so I didn't actually go to the Sun. It was something that months ago I had said I couldn't speak about. And then that sort of changed in January with the settlement coming in. So it was, it was sort of a back and forth for quite a while, and I wasn't willing to say anything. And then I finally was.
Okay, so let's, I'm going to quickly kind of set up this case, but I want you to give as much detail as possible. I think, folks, it's really a fascinating political drama that I've been watching unfold. But basically, you had applied for a position. They were hiring 4 people of that position, from what I understand. There were about 30 candidates.
I don't know how many total there were. That I'm not sure of. I was told, I think 8 were interviewed. Okay. So. And you did not get the job, and you filed a grievance
over that process. Is that kind of the aerial view of it?
Correct.
All right,
Yeah.
let's hone in. What happened, Kara?
Okay, so the interviews took place in June, and they notified rather quickly. It was about a week, so I knew by the end of June that I had not gotten one of the positions. And I did think it was, suspicious. I had sent, an email to Mr. Fiato and Joe Rothschild asking, what I was lacking, because I thought I had everything, according to the posting in place, and what I could do going forward for a leadership position. And they didn't respond, which I thought was strange, because I would think that as a, principal or associate head of school, that you would want to respond to a staff member who has a concern. And it was, while I had heard rumors throughout the summer as to who had gotten the jobs, it wasn't official until middle of August when they started, where we got a notification as to who was hired. And it really wasn't until we got back to school that things started to unravel, and it was clear that the process wasn't followed and that there were major flaws in the process.
By unravel, what do you mean?
Bits and pieces of information were coming out to us from, those involved in the interview committee, and as far as, finding out about, licensures that were lacking, and, things that we knew were suspicious, and that didn't follow the Lowell Public School protocol.
So you mentioned the committee.
Yes.
So there was a hiring committee set up for these. What were the jobs? What's the exact job title?
So it's a student support specialist. The Freshman Academy has always had a student support specialist. They had two. They were cut down to one when we had some cuts a few years ago. And then they got their second one back, I want to say 2 years ago. And so this is providing a student support specialist to each of the house offices, B, C, D, and E. And it's essentially an assistant to the dean, which we now call assistant principal. It's working with student discipline, it's parent outreach, it's checking on attendance, it's, walking the halls during school and making sure that, kids aren't where they're not supposed to be, and just basic upkeep of the house office.
Okay. And you spelled out in the article that you have all of the qualifications, everything that was required in the job posting. You had.
Yes, and I also had some experience working with discipline issues in the school, because when I survived the 2009 cuts, I didn't survive the 2010. I ended up going out to Greater Lowell for a couple of years. When I returned, the only opening was in-house suspension. So I had that on my resume. I had worked the UTech dropout program. So I had things on my resume that I thought made me a valuable candidate.
Okay. So why do you believe you were passed over? Obviously, you believe you were unjustly passed over, that you were deserving of one of those 4 slots. And I believe, if the Sun article was accurate, that there was one person hired that you had no issue with their being hired. Is that correct?
Correct. She and I have very similar qualifications as far as the licenses that we hold, and we both have our full CAGs. So I had no issue with one of the candidates. The other 3 were questionable.
Okay. You specifically called them out. These are people you're working with on a day-to-day basis now, right?
Yeah.
And you specifically called them out, and the quote, if I copied it correctly, is completely unqualified people put in positions that had no business taking those positions.
Yeah, I don't know if I quoted it just like that. I was just saying that they were lacking the qualifications necessary, or that I feel would be necessary for that position. I think it should be an assistant principal initial licensure, which requires passing the Mass Pal tasks, which are new requirements from Desi that show your leadership ability within a school. And I think if you're taking on a leadership role within the building, especially if you're dealing with parent outreach and student discipline, that you should have to pass those Mass Pal tasks and have the initial principal, assistant principal license. And I said that as much because the supervisor director is more for lead teachers and department heads. It really isn't supposed to be for, discipline and parent outreach.
From what I've been able to gather, both from reading the article in the paper and also reaching out to a few folks kind of familiar with the situation, all of the people hired did meet the minimum qualifications in the job posting. Are you disputing that alone, or are you disputing the fact that you had other qualifications that should have put you above them?
Well, so the emergency license is for people who are not qualified and they're working towards their license. You don't need anything for an emergency license. You can just I could contact Desi tomorrow and get a superintendent's emergency license. It requires nothing. It's really just because of the crisis that school districts were facing during COVID, they were allowing teachers to work unlicensed, hence the emergency license, while they work towards their license. Now, if you are someone who graduated, like I graduated with a history degree, and you hadn't given teaching a thought, and you found out that there was, a crisis in your hometown, you wanted to be a teacher, and all you really needed was, the MTEL test and a practicum, the emergency license makes sense because you can quickly get your initial license before the end of the year. But with an administration, I don't really see the need for emergency license because there's plenty of people within the building who have the initial.
And I can certainly understand where you think you're more qualified than them based on your experience. But if the State Department of Education states, well, this is how it can work, and you may hire somebody up to there, did the school department do something improper in putting somebody there who doesn't have the qualifications to be there?
Well, I mean, you're supposed to. Lowell Public School Policy says that you have to have your paperwork and your credentials in by 4:00 on the day that the posting closes, and at least one of the candidates that we're aware of did not.
You know this for a fact?
It is fact, yeah. You can. It's public information. When you go to the Desi website and you look up the licenses, you can see the day that they got it, and the posting. We know the day the posting closed. It's all public.
Okay, so that was one of the parts of the story I was a little bit confused about. It was the date was June 22nd, and one of the candidates didn't have the license by the 22nd. But got it shortly thereafter.
Yeah, so the posting closed the last day of school, which was June 21st.
Okay.
Applied that day and got the emergency license the following day, which means that on the day that the posting closed by 4 p.m., she was not licensed and should not, based on Lowell School Policy, should not have been interviewed.
Did the job description say you need to have it by the closing date, or
Public School Policy.
The posting Lowell Public School
Lowell
Policy?
Public School Policy, which has been presented to the school committee since. Yes, that has been a long-standing Lowell Public School Policy for decades. So that was violated. That was the first kind of light bulb that was like, why, if there was so many applicants and there were plenty that were qualified, why would you go with someone who didn't have the qualifications on the day that the posting closed?
My thinking would be if they had some assurance that the qualification was going to come by the time of the interview process and or the hiring. We've
lost great candidates in the past because their license was pending. It's unfortunate, but that's been a long-standing Lowell Public School Policy. There's at least one case that I know of where we lost out on a really great candidate who had all of the credentials, but the license hadn't cleared through Desi, so they were not able to take that position.
So there is established precedence that
Absolutely.
If you don't have that degree by the date, that's
the rule, yeah.
Okay. So it sounds like you have a legitimate case, and you filed a complaint through the union. You are a union rep at the high school, correct?
Yeah, and that there were many other ways that the process was flawed.
Okay.
Yeah, there were many. That was just one example.
All right. So you filed a grievance with the union.
Correct.
And the union backed you. They took this forward, and you actually won your grievance, correct?
Yes. So they saw the flaws that we saw when we presented our case to them. They saw that, the process was not followed, and that there were aspects of, the hiring practice that were violated. And their solution is to rerun the process.
Okay. And so who made that decision? Does that have to be agreed upon? Forgive me if I'm very naive when it comes to union and collective bargaining, but the school department, Dr. Boyd, Principal Fiato, decided they were going to repost the position, go through the process again. Did you have to sign off on that?
I haven't signed anything. Basically, my union rep and I met with Dr. Boyd and Jim Hall. We presented our case, and they then went back to Mr. Fiato, who said he would want an opportunity to redo the process and repost the positions.
What was the date on that? When did you?
My meeting with them was January 4th, and they, I was told, made the decision January 6th, but nobody from my union notified me. I was notified on January 11th, but the date that I guess this decision was made was January 6th.
Okay. Interesting on the dates there. So January 4th, you had your meeting with the superintendent and Attorney Hall. January 6th, they said, she's got a case here. Let's repost the position. Does the union have to, and I'm going to assume this goes all the way up to Paul George's or at the top
I've
of the
never
union?
spoken to Paul George's about it, but I'm sure he's in the loop about all grievances.
Okay, they represented you in, did they represent you in these hearings or did you go at it alone as,
Oh, no,
as a union rep?
I had, my girl from the union came with me. Yeah.
And he's been there for forever, right? He's kind of
Yeah.
been Paul George's right hand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Earl, as
Yeah.
I've known him forever.
Yeah.
Okay. So they were there with you. They sided with you and Mr. Fiato came up with this resolution. You don't think that resolution is fair?
Well, it doesn't hold accountable the people who flawed the process. I just think that those behind what happened in June should be held accountable. And I also, in my request, when we stated that the job should be reposted, we said it should have the principal, assistant principal licensure that should go along with this role. Because when I was going for my degrees, at least when I went to Fitchburg, I was told that supervisor director was for lead teachers and department heads. If you were going to lead your fellow teachers in curriculum development, for instance, that would be supervisor director. But if you were going to do anything with discipline, that you would need the principal, assistant principal license. So I got both because I was kind of unsure of what I wanted to do. And the supervisor director is a much easier license to get. It doesn't require the Pal tasks, but the principal, assistant principal does. And so we asked that it have that requirement. And the response I got from my union is, we got what we wanted. They're going to redo the process. It's up to the LSAA, which is the admin union, to decide on the qualifications for the job.
Okay. So are they backing your continued efforts now, or as far as you know, the union leadership said, okay, the hearing was held, it was resolved in her favor, we're going forward with a redo of the process, we're all set?
As far as the UTL, they feel that redoing the process is the solution that they wanted. And I know that LSAA is going to work on looking at the requirements for every position and making sure that they're what they should be.
Okay. Here's where I have a bunch of questions.
Okay.
So this all happened in early January. And we're supposed to be going through this process again in April, but you actually have some updated information as of last night.
Yeah.
During the Super Bowl, you found out.
Yeah. So it was right before I left, to go watch the Super Bowl. I was told that the positions had been reposted on Saturday, which was strange to me because the agreement, from what I was told, is that the positions would be reposted in April. And that they would hold, interviews late May, early June for next year. And then on Saturday, they went and reposted the positions, which is just strange to me. I don't understand why they did it so quickly, and why in January, when they're not going to be filling those roles again until next year. It's just suspicious. It seems the timing is off.
Okay, so you filed a complaint with the city solicitor.
Correct.
At the time, Christine O'Connor.
Correct.
Who about a month later left the city. What date did you file the complaint with Solicitor O'Connor?
It was late October. I had reached out to her. I'd have to look at my emails and things like that. I had reached out to her just with some concerns, and we had a back and forth a little bit, and so we finally had a date to sit down in late October. And I had this concern and several others that I obviously don't want to speak about publicly. I'd love to sit down with an investigator and have them look into every concern that I have. This is just one concern of many, and we met for about an hour or so, and it was shortly after that I know she left her position. I knew she was leaving the city, unfortunately, but she did send a letter to the school committee with her concerns. And I know I'm one of many cases, that my situation is just one. There's several cases I know that she was concerned about.
Okay. And I can confirm that, doing some digging over the last week or so, what my sources have told me is when your case came public that you weren't necessarily the main event
No.
in this drama between hiring an outside
Yeah.
counsel and that there are other more serious allegations. I was also told by somebody close to the situation that while they can't speak to the validity of any of the accusations, they are serious enough in nature that they would warrant an investigation.
Yeah.
Okay. Are you at liberty to discuss any of that?
No.
Is it accurate that yours isn't the most severe or the most egregious violation?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no. Mine is just, other people have various reasons why they can't speak out. Their grievances might be ongoing. They might be afraid of retaliation. They might have, family members that work in the district or young children. And so they can't, talk about it. But for me, my case was settled, so I can use it as an example of one case of many. And so it just seems that at least the last week or two, there has been a lot of pressure, it seems, to stop this investigation. And I think it's really important that the investigation go forward. And so that's why I think it's important for the school committee to follow this through, because they should want to see where the problems are, where the concerns are, and want to fix those and make a streamlined process that is fair.
Okay.
I think transparency is always a good thing. I don't know why anyone would fight against transparency.
And I, as somebody who likes to cover government, I would agree with you. One thing that I find confusing, and I'm wondering if anybody who's watching this because now we know a little bit more in depth about the dates. You had an active grievance. You filed it, and you went through the process. Turns out the process was kind of heard in early January, and actually they ruled in your favor. But you went to the solicitor. So why wouldn't you wait until you saw if your case was going to be resolved in your favor, which it was? What was the point of going to the solicitor at that point?
Well, my issues, as I stated, are deeper than just the grievance. I had several issues that I brought to the city solicitor's attention outside of just the grievance that I had filed.
Involving you personally or the overall picture and others?
Myself and, mostly myself, yeah.
Okay. Are you at liberty to discuss any of those?
No.
No. Are they subject to ongoing
I would love
process and grievances? Or?
No, but I would love when they get an outside investigator. Yes, I'd like to tell the outside investigator. Okay. In strict confidentiality, everything, so that they can make a decision on where to go with that.
All right. Do you have a question that's being asked? Do you have an axe to grind against School Boyd, somebody else in the school department, Principal Fiato? Is this the fact that you went to the solicitor rather than waiting for things to play out? Is that an indication that it's political?
No, I was actually hurt about the student support specialist positions. I thought I had a positive relationship with Mike Fiato, so I certainly don't have an axe to grind. I wouldn't have any reason.
Do you have an axe to grind with them now?
Well, I guess I already took care of that with my grievance, but my issue is that I don't see redoing the process without ensuring the integrity of the process. I don't think it's going to change anything. I don't think it's going to fix the problems that we have and get the most qualified candidates serving our students.
By integrity of the process, having a process that has integrity, but having a process that has different guidelines are two different things. It sounds like you would be okay with them reposting the position, provided it was reposted using other qualifications.
The qualifications that you should have, and also making sure that the committee is made up of the people that it should. There were no teachers on the committee, which is another violation of Lowell's policy. You're supposed to have 2 teachers on an interview committee. why wouldn't you want teachers to be a part of decision making? That's been a problem in public education across the country. Why not have the teacher voices at the table?
Are you required to, or should you have?
Lowell Public School policy says 2 teachers are on the interview committee. There were not 2 teachers on the interview committee. That's problematic.
Is that one of the reasons they decided to?
It's one of,
to redo
again,
the
like I
process?
said, it was flawed through and through. We had many issues. Yeah.
What were the reasonings for? Dr. Boyd and Jim Hall discussed it and decided to reopen up the system with Principal Fiato. But was there a ruling given? Is there any documentation that you indeed won the case, and that for XYZ reasons, meaning that XYZ could no longer be part of any process going forward?
We've been told that when they redo the process, it'll be a new committee. I don't know. I don't know how we have oversight over that or how we ensure that. Making sure that it's an impartial committee that makes the right choice.
One bit of information I received that I'm not sure, maybe you can verify, is the committee for these 4 positions consists of 13 people. Is that correct?
I forget the number. I mean,
you interviewed
there
them,
were,
right?
yeah.
Okay.
Were
there like more than 3 or 4 people?
Oh, yeah, there was more than 3 or 4. There was all of the assistant principals. There was at least 1 department head. Yes, I don't know if there were 13 on my committee, but I would say that there were at least 8 to 10.
No disrespect to the job, but we're not hiring a superintendent. We're not hiring a principal of a 4,000 student high school. You really need a hiring committee of whatever the number is, 8 to 13.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, I didn't put the committee together. That would be for the person who ran the interviews, and we're still missing some of the people that were supposed to be on it.
Is it a requirement that there has to be a committee? Is that part of the collective bargaining agreements, that if you're going to hire certain jobs, you must have a committee comprised of XYZ?
Yeah, well, it's in it. The school committee has asked for our hiring practice, and in that, it has the number of people who are supposed to be on it. You're supposed to have, teachers, other administrators. A lot of times there's a parent. Sometimes it's someone within the building who's also a parent, so they can play, they can sit in as the parent, even though they work within the school. So there are guidelines that you are supposed to follow.
Why not just wait till the process played out, even though you claim it's a sham, you think it's going to be a sham when it plays out again? Why not wait until it plays out again, see what happens, and then go forward? Why the need to come out publicly now? Why the need to go to the solicitor back then, in your particular case?
In my case, okay,
not speaking for the others.
So when I went to the city solicitor, I was aware that I was one of many cases. I knew it was not just me. And then it seemed like that our voices were being heard, or at least the concerns that we had were being heard, when the school committee decided to hire the outside investigator just before Christmas. And then last week, you have a lot of people and a lot of pressure coming, people wanting to pump the brakes or stop this investigation. And I really think it's in the best interest of the city and the students of Lowell Public Schools that this investigation go forward, that all of the issues are brought to light. They don't have to become public. They can be part of this just investigation, but that the school committee gets that information so that they can make changes that might be necessary going forward.
And to provide an update at the next city council meeting tomorrow night, from the night we're recording this, there is a motion asking they want the mayor who's the chair of the school committee, ask for a 6-week delay in hiring a special counsel to wait for the current solicitor to look at things. Then the following night on the school committee agenda, school committee member Chun, who I believe originally voted in favor of the outside counsel, also filed a motion asking to wait for no more than a month, was the wording. Why not wait?
Because I think that everyone had the courage to come forward, and a city solicitor with 27 years experience in the city has said that there was validity in those concerns, and the school committee made the decision to go forward with counsel. Why would we wait? If you know that there are systemic issues within the system, why wouldn't you want to find out what they are and fix them before the city faces a lawsuit or something like that, that would cost them, you know, far more money than just getting an outside investigator and making the decisions that are necessary.
You allege that there are improprieties. That has not been proven yet.
Yeah, so what,
Correct.
but if there is a belief that there has not been improprieties, why would you not investigate? Like, why are so many people pushing back on an investigation? What are they afraid of?
Well, one of the things that I found puzzling, and we discussed it with school committee woman Jackie Doherty on a podcast just a few days ago, was this apparent lack of a paper trail. Now, in your case, there's a paper trail. We all know. It's troubling to me that the current solicitor, Helene Tomlinson, says she has no paperwork. There's paperwork.
Yeah.
So there's paperwork.
Clearly, there's paperwork.
Have you spoken to her?
No, why would I have reached out to a city solicitor who took the job in, was it January? After the school committee had already voted for an investigation. So
But now
they had already,
the documentation.
Well,
Can the union provide it to her?
I mean, if I don't know why she doesn't have the documentation. I don't know why, if the school committee has already made the decision, why do we, those of us who had the courage to come to Christine O'Connor, why do we have to go through that whole process again? Why, we've already established that there are concerns that should be investigated. So,
but if the woman who's running the department says, I don't have this documentation,
she should.
Isn't it easier to just provide it to her? You and whoever else?
I mean, she should have that information. I don't know why she doesn't. But as far as a paper trail, you know, maybe Christine O'Connor has that information and it's so egregious that for confidentiality reasons, she's waiting to give it to the private investigator. I don't know the situation. I don't know why there isn't a paper trail.
That part's interesting. She's, as an attorney who was a city solicitor for a long time, she should probably know she can't walk off with city paperwork. So I don't think she's dumb enough to. Yeah,
I don't believe she did. I think that the paper trail was left. I was told that our names and our information were left with the city law department. I don't know why they don't have that.
Okay. Do you believe that it's a stall tactic? That it's strictly a stall tactic?
It's suspicious, because, as you said, if somebody can't legally take documents, then they wouldn't have, or at least you hope they wouldn't have. And they're in the city law department somewhere, so I don't know why she doesn't have them.
Did you go to anybody else with your concerns? Did you go to any members of the school committee?
You know, they're aware of my concerns ongoing. They don't know the details that I share with Christine O'Connor.
Is Jackie Doherty one of those?
Yeah, she knows the gist of my situation, but she doesn't know every detail that I shared with Christine O'Connor that are alarming and concerning to me.
Okay. So at this point, you're hoping that an outside counsel comes in, looks at everything. At that point, will you abide by whatever decision is made? If the outside counsel says, we don't think there's a case here, and while the process may have been flawed, just redoing the process, following whatever guidelines exist, you would accept that.
I mean, sure. I don't, if that's what they say, I don't think that's what they're going to say, but sure.
You say you believe you've been retaliated
against.
Retaliated against since you made this battle, or does this that you didn't get this job because of retaliation?
I've had concerns for a number of years for various different reasons. But this year, I think now that this has been an ongoing case since my grievance was filed, no, I haven't felt any retaliation this year. But, we'll see what happens the rest of the year.
Fair to say you believe you weren't hired, though, because of...
Absolutely.
You've said it in the song that because of your union activities. Has your union backed you on this? I would think if Paul Georges thought one of his members was being retaliated against, he would move heaven and earth.
Well, they filed the grievance on my behalf.
Correct.
And they said that I should have received one of the positions based on the Lowell School policy that you strive to hire the most qualified people for different positions.
But they've been
Yes.
strangely quiet on this one. I don't know if that's, that's the protocol, but
Yeah, I don't know if that's how they usually handle grievance matters, that they're not going to share information, that it's, it's not, they don't share publicly, especially where the process is still being redone. But if you look at the grievance that they filed, they stood with me and they thought my case had validity, or they wouldn't have filed the grievance.
I've had that confirmed.
Mm-hmm.
You said the position was posted, so it appears the process is going to begin to go forward. Are you
Mm-hmm.
going to apply again?
I don't I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. I really don't know if it would just be an embarrassment to go through that process again. Because I don't know if I trust the process. We haven't made the changes that we need to.
What changes weren't made? Have you seen the job posting?
I've seen the job posting. It's the same as it was last year.
It doesn't include the requirements you highlighted earlier about.
It says you can have supervisor, director, or principal, assistant principal. So it's one or the other, but it's pretty much the same. They just reposted the same job description. I don't know who the committee is. I don't know if I can trust the integrity of the process, or if it's just going to be, redoing it to appease, the grievance, and then just put the same 4 people back in.
Wouldn't one of the people be ineligible based on the one who didn't have the
Well,
requisite paperwork by June 22nd, or because now
it's a reposting, so she would have she would have the ability to reapply. Yeah.
Okay. Were there any other improprieties, any other conditions that you think should have that you believe are required to be posted in the job posting, that are requirements that weren't the first time?
I would think an initial license, not an emergency license, would be.
But the state okays an emergency license.
The state okays it, but that doesn't mean someone's qualified.
Does Lowell High policy require?
So when I first started in the city of Lowell, if you didn't have an initial license, your position was open and reposted, and you had to re-interview every year. And that was, I think it was called a preliminary license when I came in. If you didn't have the initial, you were considered a long-term sub. You only became a permanent teacher with an initial license. And now, if it is a Desi licensure, it needs to be recognized. So I believe as long as Desi recognizes it, regardless of what the requirements are for that license, it can be recognized.
It sounds like your real beef at this point should be with Desi.
I know.
That's you believe it's that there should be a minimum requirement, and the emergency thing. The emergency thing, when you don't have enough people applying for enough, as you call them, qualified people applying for a job.
Well, I called Desi.
But once you have and again, I was told some close to 30 applicants in all. You certainly have the documentation to do it. It sounds like your battle is with Desi and or your state legislators who should be pushing them.
Well, I do have a problem with Desi. I called them and they said that the emergency licenses were put in place during COVID to address the shortages that school districts were facing. And the woman on the line said, as the license states, it's for an emergency situation. And I said, well, where's the oversight? Why do you not have oversight of districts to tell them that this is essentially like the old waiver system, where they would have to give a justification for hiring someone on an emergency license over an initial? And she said, we leave it up to the districts and the school committees within those districts to have that oversight and to make those decisions. Now, there are situations where somebody may be on an emergency license. They could justify hiring that person over someone like myself, right? I know of at least one person who had applied for the job who has, on several occasions, filled in for maternity leave at the student support specialist position in the FA, has filled in at the dean position when deans have been out for various reasons, but is still working towards the initial license, but has a full CAGS. If they had come forward and said, on an emergency license, but has this, and this, that you have not filled in at that position, so we're going to go with this candidate, I would have understood it. But when you have candidates who have not had that experience and who don't have the CAGs and they're not even close to the same level of licensure, that's when it becomes questionable. And that's when you want to say, what's going on here, you know?
Who made the ultimate decision? Was it Principal Fiato?
As far as I know, he has full control as, he's head of schools, building principals have control over the hiring process, which is why I emailed him first. He was the first person I emailed and I never got a reply. He also didn't reply to the union grievance that we filed. So we never had a chance to hear from him on, why the decision was made. It went to the level of the superintendent because he didn't sit down with my union representative and myself to explain himself. And I've been looking for an answer for 8 months, and that's all I want is an answer. And he has not given me one.
Do you know if I would assume the search committee recommends a certain number of names. Now they needed 4 positions. Oftentimes search committees recommend extra names, and then the person making the hiring decision selects from those names. Do you know if you advanced, to your knowledge, did you advance beyond that recommendation phase?
No, myself and the other person who is also highly qualified are both building reps, and we're the only 2 who did not advance. That was also why the process was suspicious.
Did you have a contentious relation? You said you had a good relationship with.
I thought I did. Apparently, I don't. Yeah.
And head of school.
Head of school. Yeah. Yeah.
The people on that search committee you interviewed in front of, you know all those people?
I know most of them. Yeah, there were a few who worked in student support services and stuff who I don't see them on a daily basis, but working in the high school, you know who they are. Yeah.
Did you have a contentious relationship with them? Any reason that they would personally seek retribution?
Yes, because I'm a building rep, and so I represent the teachers when a dean. Now they call them assistant principals. The title has changed. If there is an issue with a teacher and a dean or assistant principal, I'm the one who brings that forward. And so, yeah, they would have reason to dislike me if they feel that, they've been called out because of something I've brought forward. Absolutely.
I would imagine there's some level of contentiousness between management.
Always, yeah.
Representatives at all schools. Have the issues that you're aware of, are they just at the high school, or do they go to other schools in the district as well?
I have been told it's not just the high school, that it's district wide.
Okay. Yeah. What I'm trying to get at here, Kara, is so sometimes some people don't interview well. I'm not saying that's the case with you. I wouldn't know enough to know, but sometimes people choke during interviews, or they don't put their best for whatever reason. Other times, as you said, this personality conflicts. Or whatever. Do you feel you interviewed well that day? Do you believe you were given a fair chance during that interview? Were you asked things you expected to be asked?
No, it was a very rushed process. It was only about 4 or 5 questions. It was very, very quick. But one of the things that I did for my supervisor director license, because I had done my practicum for principal, assistant principal, and because I had a full CAGS, rather than doing a second practicum, one of the options was to do a panel review at Desi. So I have driven into Desi and for an hour and a half had questions shot at me, and they found me competent enough to give me another administrative license based on that panel review. And when I went for the dean position last year, I was told I interviewed very well, and that the reason I had lost out on that job is because the candidate that they hired had experience. And that is when I said, well, how do I get experience? And they had promised that there would be opportunities for experience. Now, in the fall of 2021, Joe Rothschild sent out an email and said, who is interested in administration? There was about 5 or 6 of us who went to that meeting, and she had promised us opportunities in administration. None of the people who received the student support specialist positions were there, and none of the people who went to that meeting have since been given any type of, opportunities. And so that's, again, it's that back and forth of, obviously interview well, have, proven competency, have shown interest in administration. What would be the reason for not giving someone an opportunity if it's not retaliatory. That's concerning. Like if someone has all of the qualifications and you've told them that they interview well, but they're lacking experience, why would you, as a building representative, a principal of a building, why would you not want to help them or foster their process to leadership? Why would you purposely keep them or hold them back if it's not retaliatory? So that's where the questions, I've had so many questions, and that's why I just want an answer to them.
So what are you hoping happens at this point? Obviously, you want an outside counsel to do the investigation.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like we know what you believe the investigation will find. They're improper hiring practices. How does the thing get resolved?
That there is integrity in the hiring process, that, someone's qualifications matter. One of the questions that I asked of the person who ran the interviews is, were our qualifications part of the scoring system that you used? And she said no. How are a person's qualifications not one of the most important things when applying for a job? Right? So we need a system that gives more weight to someone who has a professional versus someone who has an initial versus someone who has a provisional versus someone who has an emergency. We need a system that gives more weight to someone who has an advanced degree in educational leadership and management versus somebody who is just starting their program. We need a system that properly ranks a candidate's answers. That's another thing that's come out, is that when we got the scoring sheets, supposedly, myself and another candidate were not in the bottom. So why were we not put forward? If that's the only ranking system that they used, why were we not put forward? So there's so many questions, and it clearly lacked integrity. Who is going to oversee that process and make sure that going forward, we can trust that the best people are being hired to serve our students? Because I don't have faith in it, and many other people don't either. I've had more people reach out to me in the last, 24, 36 hours who have similar stories, who don't feel that the process has integrity. So why would we not want to, if we know that there is a problem, all work together and fix it? Why are we trying to railroad the opportunity to have integrity, accountability, oversight? I don't understand why those things would be a bad thing.
So you want, in your world, the process would not go forward until an outside counsel is investigated. And
Correct.
then
Yeah.
they would fix whatever, and then would you apply at that point?
If I thought that the process was going to be done properly, yes. But the fact that they reposted it on Saturday tells me that they're rushing this process so that they can put the same 4 people back before there's an investigation, before they have to make changes to the process, the needed changes that we've been asking for. And then they can just say that they redid the process. Why rush it? It makes no sense to rush it at this point. We've come this far. You should want to do it right.
Kara Pigeon, anything else you'd like folks to know?
No, I think I've
48 minutes and 15 seconds. I took the first 2 minutes off the top.
Okay.
Okay. It's a fascinating study. If what you allege is true, you still sounds like you have a legitimate case, a legitimate beef. I do understand that some of the folks who you're, I don't want to say hurling accusations of, but the superintendent, the principal, the people on the committee, I would imagine they're not at liberty to speak right now, and I honestly haven't spoken to any of them, but would you like to see this process play out publicly, the investigation? Would you be okay with this being an open investigation? Would you be okay with public hearings? Should there be public hearings?
No, I don't think it should. I think that if you try and make this public, then the people that have been the most impacted, which again, not myself, others that have been impacted even more egregiously, they're not going to have the courage to come forward. It needs to be a private investigation, and then that information needs to be shared with the school committee. And the school committee, in their role, needs to make the changes that they think are fair and necessary.
You sound like a political candidate. Is that in your future?
I don't know, maybe. We'll see.
This election cycle?
No.
Okay. Kara, I appreciate you coming in. Again, we recorded it. I'm going to post it in its entirety, completely unedited. And I think we put a lot of extra information out there that that you can only put in so many words
Yeah.
in a newspaper article. But I appreciate you joining us,
All right.
and please keep us posted. You're welcome to come
Thank you.
back and update us at any point.
All right. Thank you very
All
much.
right. We want to thank Karen. We want to thank you for joining us as well. Thank you also to our sponsors, Reverie 73. Tremendous cannabis experience at Reverie 73. Their mission statement is to listen, explain, inspire, and delight. They've got a location, 1148 Bridge Street in Lowell. They're opening 2 more in 2023 in Gloucester, in Beverly. And just like the store in Lowell, they will focus on customer education and customer experience. Visit them at 1148 Bridge Street in Lowell, or order online at reverie73.com. Thank you as well to our friends at Hafner's. In addition to auto pay and auto delivery, Hafner's offers seasonal budget and pre-buy plans. They also offer propane and oil at competitive prices. Call 866-IT-KICKS, 866-IT-KICKS, or visit hafners.com to learn more. And last but certainly not least, Washington Savings Bank. There you go. I got my mug back, all is well. Inside Lowell podcast world. Get an opportunity to get $300 simply by doing $1,000 worth of direct deposit. Payroll, Social Security. Get $1,000 directly deposited into an account. Get $300. Go to WashingtonSavingsBank.com to learn more. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. I'm not sure where you're going to view this, but again, we recorded it on Monday night, February 13th. 2020. Happy Valentine's Day to anyone watching it tonight or tomorrow or at any point in the future. As we like to say here at Inside Lowell, news, information, and sometimes entertainment on your schedule, not ours. As we also like to say, if Lowell is your home, InsideLowell.com is your place. Stay safe, everybody.